All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Munro Live. Today we are going to do a short Munro or Ask Munro segment. We've got myself, Scott Hoffman, and Kevin Hardy here to talk about one of our favorite topics, which is manual transmissions, and whether or not those may make sense in an EV or not, based on some recent news. Now, this was kind of all sparked. There's been some news on Twitter and things have come up, some articles. Apparently, Lexus is in development of a manual transmission for EVs. And so the question was asked, you know, is this revolutionary? Is this cool? What's this all about? What should we know? Is it going to change the world? And so, I don't know, Kevin and I were talking about, we thought maybe we'd make a video to just address some of those questions. So we're going to talk about, you know, what it is that Lexus is claiming that they have, what we like about manual transmissions, why they're even necessary in a vehicle, whether they make sense in an EV, and if maybe there are some applications where it does. So at a high level, we'll just start with this. Lexus has come out and said that they're under development of a manual transmission for an EV. And so we did a little reading and went through the article and kind of learned some more about their system. I don't know, Kevin, I know you were reading about it a little. If you were to summarize, kind of what are they doing?
So, you know, in short, it's an entirely synthesized, you know, manual transmission experience, so that there is no clutch or anything like that, but they are giving the, you know, the driver the sensation that essentially you can shift the vehicle. There's RPM ranges. Apparently, you can stall it. I'm not sure how helpful that is.
Apparently, you can even roll backwards down a hill, right?
Yeah.
The one thing you probably didn't want to replicate in a manual transmission, they're apparently replicating.
So, yeah, most new manuals have brake hold, at least on the hill.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's in short what they're doing. They're, you know, adding a series of components and programming to, you know, give the driver this kind of more connected experience with an EV.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to say that from what at least we know about the system yet, and we haven't torn it down and seen, but we watched some of the videos they have with the proof of concept. There is, you know, a gear shift lever that they're using, but essentially you could think of it as they've got this mechanism that's sort of just like a button, much like a paddle shifter in an automatic transmission, where you're simulating the experience, but really everything that they're doing is on the programming side, and they're modeling the power delivery to make it mimic a manual transmission with an internal combustion powertrain, and giving the driver the ability to feel that sensation, but there's actually no decoupling of gears or any clutch pack or anything that actually makes a manual transmission a manual transmission. And so to kind of speak to that a little bit, we're going to get into the parts here in just a minute, but I did want to start. So we are both three-pedal enthusiasts.
Yeah.
We've both owned, what, a dozen different manual standard transmission cars.
11.
I was going to ask, 11 for Kevin, 12 for me. Kevin, of the manual equipped vehicles you've owned, what is the oldest, what is the coolest, and what is the strangest?
Oldest would be my 68 Fastback. I don't have any more, trying to get it back, but
That was a Mustang, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basic trading present to myself. But coolest would probably be it's like a ZF 52, I think it's called. So it's from a Super Duty, made it behind a Cummins 4BTA, so a 3.9 liter turbocharged diesel.
So that was a vehicle that you built. You couldn't buy
the
that.
whole
That
thing.
was
The
totally
frame was
homemade.
built, the front suspension, all that stuff. I think it was actually a bullet point on my resume for here. So,
Okay.
And then weirdest is also probably that.
That one?
I mean, yeah, it was just an odd vehicle to build, essentially from the ground up. So,
Got it.
Yeah.
For me, oldest would be a 79 Bronco with a 351 Cleveland and a 4-speed. Still have that vehicle. It's at my dad's house. That one's a fun one to drive. The big green Meanie. Coolest, I would say, I had a swapped vehicle. I put a TDI powertrain into an 87 Vanagon that had a 4-speed, and that thing was not geared for the engine that I put into it, and was a challenge to drive, but you know, it was cool. And then weirdest was probably, I had a 91 Geo Tracker with a 1.3 liter engine and a 4-speed, and it was entirely painted in bedliner. You don't want that vehicle. But anyways, all right, so we've had a few manuals. Come on, and we'll talk about an EV powertrain and why, you know, how it functions, and really whether or not a clutch pack or shifting is even necessary. So on the table here, we have the gear train from the rear drive unit on a Tesla Model Y. And I think when people talk about EV powertrains, or just EVs in general, and the simplification of parts, reduction of parts, the gearbox is one of the areas where that really shines through, because you've got an electric motor that's essentially got a fixed gear ratio that's going out to the wheels. And so you don't have clutch packs and gears that you're stepping through to work within the bounds of an internal combustion engine. So in this gearbox, you'd have your rotor, which is the rotating part of your electric motor, that splines into this output gear. And then essentially you go through 3 different gear sets that reduce the ratio to what's ultimately going to go out to your wheels. And so coming out of that last bearing there, you would have, well, this is the wrong way, but you'd have your half shafts that go out to your wheels. So essentially your path from motor out to your wheels is fixed, and it's pretty compact, relatively speaking, compared to a normal transmission. And I know, like, now we're up to automatic transmissions have what, as many as 10 speeds in some
that's how
cases.
my truck is, 10 speed.
And really the whole reason that that's necessary, what enables that with an electric motor, is an e-motor is a lot less sensitive to RPMs relative to its torque output. So essentially this electric motor can spin anywhere from 0 RPMs up to maybe 15, 16,000, even in some as much as 20,000 RPMs without overheating, without stalling, whereas with an ICE internal combustion counterpart, you've got essentially a kind of a narrow range,
power
maybe
band.
like 2,000 to 4,000 or maybe 5,000 RPMs, where above that you're going to overheat the vehicle, below that you're going to stall the vehicle. And so the reason that you shift is that relative to the speed you're already moving, what you're calling for with the pedal, and how many RPMs your engine is at, you've got to keep it within those bookends. So you're constantly having to decouple the spinning of the engine and then recouple it with whatever gear you need to be in that's optimized for power delivery at that speed. So all that to say that in an EV, you really don't have that, because the electric motor, you're getting full torque right off the bat, and it's not until you start to get to very high speeds that you start to get some back EMF or back electromotive force that, you know, would be perceived as a loss.
Efficiency loss, yeah.
So I think the question then becomes, awesome, EVs, they don't have this, they can just have the single speed. Does it make sense for a manual transmission or any sort of transmission, even automatic, to be in an EV? And so as much as I would say that the simulated one, in the Lexus case, it's not a real manual transmission. It's not, nothing's decoupling. It's still a fixed ratio going out there. They're just, with software, essentially giving you that feel. But there are applications where it does make sense, potentially, to have decoupling elements in the gear train. And I know, the Taycan's one example of that.
Yeah, and that's a 2-speed unit. Obviously, it's more performance-oriented. And I would say that's kind of where your, on-road vehicles or off-road vehicles aside, some of the, like UTVs and things of that nature are not, running 300 volts, 400 volts, or whatever it is, through it. So they might choose to have a 2-speed gearbox to get additional torque, because of their overall power configuration. And then there's obviously swaps. We kind of talked a little bit about that, where people are, and OEMs as well have kind of done showcases where they've thrown electric powertrains into, a Camaro or a Mustang or something like that. And they do have a transmission behind it, like a 6-speed or something like that. But, honestly, there's, I think, a very limited use case for it. It's typically more in a performance-oriented environment, whether you're trying to capitalize on the speed of a vehicle or increase torque. And, it takes away the best thing. In some ways about an EV, it's just the simplicity, the simple, not even simple, the sheer amount of reduced parts that are moving in a vehicle, which, EV has a lot of parts. I mean, these are all, laminate stacks here, but they're all fixed, and they're not moving. Yeah. That's unlike the valve train of a dual overcam motor or even a 10-speed transmission.
Lifters, all that stuff. And so, I mean, if I put on like my lean design hat, I would say, without a doubt, it is adding unnecessary cost, weight, complexity to a vehicle to put a simulated transmission in there. There are instances, like you mentioned, the Taycan, where if you're going for a super high-speed vehicle, maybe it makes sense at those higher RPMs to switch and allow you, better performance. So there are some 2-speed EVs on the road, but that truly has a decoupling. In that one, it is not a manual though, it's an automatic 2-speed gearbox. And then the only other application for over-the-road trucking, right? That would be if you need a ton of torque to get things moving. People talk about like in semis, that might be an application where it makes sense to have multiple speeds. Another way that you can do that though, which we've recently seen with the Tesla Semi, is they have axle disconnects essentially, that they've got 3 motors, but then they use all 3 to get it going, but then they just decouple the other 2 and run with 1 motor when they're at speed. So there's some use cases where EV gear trains won't just be a fixed ratio all the way out. But in terms of, in terms of circling back to the genesis of this topic, which is what Lexus is doing with their concept on the, was it the UX 300E, I think?
Yeah. A small SUV.
I love that they're having fun with it. And they said, they asked their engineering team, what is it you miss about an ICE vehicle? And they said the standard transmission. So they're replicating that. They're giving drivers the ability to pick different like famous powertrains and simulate their power delivery. But essentially they're going to kind of dumb down the electric motor in a way to like, you could get max torque right away, but they're going to like let it throttle in as if it were an ICE vehicle. So to be honest, a little gimmicky. It's not revolutionary. It's not adding capability that wasn't really there. But that said, for the enthusiast, or like you said, maybe for swaps, if someone has a classic car that they want to still look and feel like that, you know, you couple that with the simulated engine noise that I also have issue with, but that people are also doing. I think you can buy an exhaust kit for a Tesla. You can, and it just makes the noises. I mean, there will be a market for it, but it is going to be very niche, and it's not going to change the world or anything. I would say that for sure.
No, yeah.
Yeah. And what did Volkswagen call it? Fahrvergnügen, the joy of driving.
Sure.
Like, there are people for which that is very important. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone in this building thought it was cool, but probably not something we're going to see widely used in industry, or for sure we're not going to. So
it might be fun to drive.
Yeah. And you said you haven't driven it yet.
It could be fun, but for now I'll stick with my Miata.
So open invite to Lexus, obviously part of the Toyota brand of vehicles and family. If you want to send us one, let us check it out, change our minds. We're open to be told that we're wrong, but having not driven one, it just sort of seems like it might be a little bit gimmicky. So always open to different feedback. That was kind of our hot take on it. Again, as always, we appreciate you guys joining us, and have a great day.